Good evening. My name is Mary LeClaire, and I'm here tonight to introduce you to someone, a candidate for State Senator, John Flores.
Pleasure to be here, Mary.
Hi, John. John, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your background and your experience? I know that you're a Barnstable Town Councilor.
Yes.
So we'd really like to hear from you.
Well, let me tell you, let me start at the beginning and sort of work my way
yes,
up.
Please.
I am a fourth generation family member of Cape Cod, in particular from Provincetown. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, my dad's family were all in the fishing industry in the town of Provincetown, and I had the good fortune of having lifelong connections with Cape Cod as a result. I spent most of my career off Cape. I started as a teacher, as a coach, worked my way up administratively. I became a school administrator, eventually became a school superintendent. While I was a school superintendent during the Wells-Salucci administrations, I was recruited to run a couple of state agencies, which I did. And then subsequent to that, I went into higher education. I became the dean of the College of Education down at Nova Southeastern University, located in Fort Lauderdale. So for a while I left and then came back and opened up a couple of companies, businesses that were in the online business, and still part owner of one, where we create online classes and courses for K-12, higher ed, corporate government, military, and telehealth constituency. So I've had a varied background. I've had real life experience. I'm a dad of 4 daughters, 8 grandchildren, real life experience, a lot of common sense. And 10 years ago, when I came back to Cape Cod on a full-time basis, I was recruited and encouraged to run for Barnstable Town Council, which I did. And I won, and I've been at Barnstable Town Council now for a number of years. And same thing happened relative to state senator. A number of folks, family, friends, up and down Cape Cod, as well as the islands, encouraged me to run as the common sense candidate to represent Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. So hence my name is on the ballot. We'll be looking for votes come this November 6th, and I think collectively together we can really make this happen. I've had a groundswell of support from folks that I didn't expect. I mean, I'm out knocking on doors on a daily basis, meeting people, greeting people, and it's amazing how disenfranchised they are with the current state of government. And you know, I tell them that I'm a fiscal conservative, which means that, you know, spend what we can afford. Socially, I'm a moderate guy. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but most importantly, I'm common sense. And it seems that both in state government, local government, in some cases, and especially at the federal level, you know, we've lost a lot of common sense over the years. So I'm here to be grounded, if you will, to help ground, if you will, I think a presence for the next person to represent Cape Cod and the islands as the state senator. But I bring a wealth of experience, a lot of experience, and as I say, real life experience and good judgment in terms of having lived life and understanding that, you know, not everything is always a bed of roses, that there's ups and downs and there's successes and failures, unlike my opponent, who pretty much has not really had those experiences. So I think I bring a uniqueness with the background that I have. You know, you talk about other related kinds of things that I've done. Charlie Baker appointed me, the governor appointed me to be a trustee at Cape Cod Community College, so I work closely with the college. I have also an appointed position with the Pilgrim Nuclear Advisory Panel, which is in the process of helping make sure that as Entergy closes Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant, that everything is done in a very transparent way so that we protect the best interests of not only the people who live here in Massachusetts, but the environment in general. So I have a lot of different aspects of my background that I think will contribute to being a very successful state senator.
And how do you plan to do this? I mean, what do you plan to, what are your plans?
Well, I think first and foremost, you know, as a Republican state senator going into the State House, I have the ability, I think, to file bills, to get bills on the record that will allow me to work with other members of the legislature. You know, having been a school superintendent, you realize that you have to get to yes, you have to reach across the aisle, and I think I have a really excellent capability and a past experience that allows me to get people to yes. I realize that sometimes when you're negotiating, you're not going to get everything that you want, but you get some of what you want. And I feel that that's really where the art of negotiation takes place. We don't have that in Massachusetts. We don't have that even at the federal level. And I think that's something that I want to bring forward, getting people to work collectively together towards common goals, i.e. fiscal conservatism and i.e. social moderation.
Sounds like collaboration to me.
It's total collaboration. I've always felt that, consensus building is the key really to success. I mean, people have to walk away from the table feeling that they've gotten something from the discussion, something from the debate, something from the bill that perhaps will be passed and signed by the governor. And I know that I have a very, very strong relationship with the administration to the point where I do have the endorsement of Governor Charlie Baker. I have the endorsement of Karen Polito. Just as important, I have the endorsement from Sheriff Jim Cummings. He sees me as a law and order kind of guy. I have the endorsement of District Attorney Mike O'Keefe. Most recently, the Mass Coalition of Police, which is the largest police union in the state of Massachusetts, gave me their endorsement. And coupled with that, the fact that I understand small business, I'm a pro-business guy. I just received the National Federation of Independent Business endorsement as someone who will represent them in a most positive way when I'm elected to the state senator. So all of that varied background, I think, differentiates me, separates me from my opponent in a lot of different ways. A real life experience.
That's what I was going to ask you, was what the primary differences is between you and your opponent.
Well, besides age, I think it's real life experience. I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in the for-profit industry, I've worked in the not-for-profit industry, and so I have a clean and clear understanding of what's expected in order to be successful. When I was in state government running a couple of state agencies, I worked closely with the state legislature to get different aspects of bills passed, getting language inserted into a bill so it would support what we were doing in the world of education. So I think in terms of that real life experience, that's what's going to bring me, I think, the opportunity to serve the folks of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, in Cape Cod in a most positive way. I think some of the other differences is just age in general. My opponent is, just barely 30, just over 30 years of age, and I know that more often than not he's been quoted in the paper that, he thinks that people who are over the age of 50, 55 probably shouldn't be in government. They should sort of just go out to the prairie and, kind of watch the sun set. And I always say that, when I was 30 years old, I always thought I was the smartest guy in the room too, but it's amazing now that I'm in my 60s what I've learned over that period of time. So, my opponent's, I think he lacks the judgment that I think my experience brings to the table. And some of the examples of that, he has supported Massachusetts being a sanctuary state. He supported Massachusetts being one of the safe injection sites. Across the board, he's never met a tax he didn't love. He tried to weaken the criminal justice bill. He's voted against the governor well over 125 times. Votes that basically were just, in essence, directed by leadership. And probably the most egregious one was, on the third or fourth day that he was elected and he was up in the State House, he voted himself that $40,200 pay raise, a 52% pay increase from what the prior legislature had been given. So, I would say to anybody, I don't know about you, but I know personally, on the third or fourth day of work, I never got a $40,000 pay raise that I would have the opportunity to vote in my favor. So I thought that was wrong. The rest of the Cape delegation had voted against it. He did basically what the Senate president told him to do. So I think he's controlled. He's not a free will thinker, if you will. He follows the party line specifically, and I think as a result, he doesn't really do what's in the best interest of the majority of folks on Cape Cod and the islands. I think he's really focused on what he's doing in his own interest in many respects. So, I'm in this from the perspective of being totally transparent, having integrity, and trying to preserve the beautiful Cape Cod that we have in the islands, so that what I enjoyed as a child, what my own kids enjoyed, coming down there every summer, all summer, and during the fall, winter, and spring, I want my grandkids to experience that as well as their grandkids. So, we have to make sure from an environmental perspective that we protect that too. So I'm very, very much a strong proponent of that.
Along those lines, how has being a family man helped you become what you are today?
Now, that's an interesting question. Being a family man, I think, has probably the most rewarding experience of anything that really I've done. Raising daughters and raising a family and being a family person per se teaches you it teaches you humility.
Four daughters, definitely.
It teaches you that sometimes you're not always right. It teaches you good judgment. It forces you to listen to the other side, probably when you think you weren't going to have to. I'm very fortunate. My daughters are all successful. One's two are in the education business, one's a lawyer, and one is in the business community. But I think the most important thing that being a family man has taught me is that, working, trying to make enough money to buy a house on Cape Cod, live on Cape Cod, pay your bills. I get all of that. I understand that. I know what it is to own property. I know what it is to pay taxes. I know what it is to have kids that need X, Y, and Z the first day of school, or whether it be high school tuitions or college tuitions or pay for weddings, all those sorts of things that are real life experiences. It makes me identify, if you will, with the folks not only in Mashpee, but across Cape Cod. I mean, these are the things that we do on a regular basis, trying to make it a little bit better for our children, trying to give them a little bit more than what we had. I mean, I think that's the American way. My opponent doesn't have any of those experiences. So I think it's made me a much more well-rounded individual, a much more empathetic individual. And I've also had the tragedies of life. My first wife died in an unexpected accident. So, those are real-life experiences that change who you are and what you're about. It makes you really think through different processes. So that, when you're dealing with family, friends, and in this case, when I'm dealing with constituents, I have a big heart and want to work with everyone and help them make sure that they reach their highest level of expectation. Right. So that's all part of that whole family experience. I think that's critical.
And one other question that I'd really like to know what you think of is, what do you think the most pressing issues are on Cape Cod today?
Well, I think first and foremost, the most pressing issue is probably water and water quality. Through the Barnstable Town Council, I serve on the Water Resources Committee. I served on the Opioid Committee. I served on the Asset Management Committee. So I have a clear understanding of the issues that we face, not only in Barnstable, where I'm a town council, but those are pervasive pretty much in every community on Cape Cod, including the islands. We need to be sure that we control the water. We live on the aquifer that supports who we are in terms of drinking water, in terms of our oceans, in terms of our lakes, in terms of our ponds. If we don't have quality water on Cape Cod, no one's going to come here. So first and foremost, I think that is the most critical issue. Opioids in and of themselves, they speak for themselves. I left earlier this evening the drop-in program over at the Mashpee Library, where folks that have addiction problems hopefully are encouraged to come in and deal with the issue and try to figure out, how to make their life better, how to improve their life, and how to maintain, if you will, a clean life, not being dependent upon opioids or other drugs. And so, I support that wholeheartedly. We need to make sure we have stronger programs. We need to look at opioids as a disease as opposed to just a drug, and make sure that healthcare services provide, the time, effort, and support that it takes, if you will, to get back on the right track. Nobody grows up wanting to be a drug addict. Nobody grows up wanting to be an alcoholic. These things just happen, and so we as a society have to be there to help them improve and treat them and make sure that they have a better life as time goes on. So those are some. I think obviously tourism, the fishing industry, public safety, public education. I'm having been in the public education business all my life, if you will. Education is the great equalizer. We have to be sure that we have strong public schools for our children. So all of those things coupled, and finally, housing and jobs. Affordable housing on Cape Cod. It's one of the disappearing acts of this millennium. A lot of folks can't afford to come back and live here, and we have to figure out ways to make that happen. And I have some ideas for affordable housing that I know I'll bring forward in the form of bills. And I think also, just as I want to help the younger, I want to help folks who are retired. I think anybody who is retired in the state of Massachusetts, the first $100,000 that they receive in retirement, if they receive, or they should get a $100,000 tax exemption on Massachusetts state tax, and that's a bill that I would fight. Coupled with also the term limits. I believe there should be term limits for all politicians, both at the state level, at the local, state, and federal level.
And how can people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me by a number of different ways. On my website, which is www.jfloresforsenate.com. They can call my office at 774-994-7000, or they can email me at john@floresforsenate.com. But the easiest way probably is just to remember the phone number, 774-994-7000. Or if you Google John Flores Senate, if you go on Google, my website will show up, and on my website you'll see all my positions, where I stand philosophically, as well as a Q&A section where there's a statement and then an answer to what I believe in and what I will be supporting as the next state senator for Cape Cod and the islands.
Well, I really want to thank you very much, because I've enjoyed this conversation.
So have I, Mary, and I would love the opportunity to come back and talk some more and share with the audience a little bit more about who I am and what I'm about. But again, thank you all for watching.